Welcome back, my friends, to the sweet spot where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, our Holton and Paul Lewis.
Hey there,
guys.
How's it going?
Very good. Is it early? Is it late?
We're all in the same time zone. Even though it looks like I'm filming in the dark, my windows are open. I'm in a hotel in Atlanta.
Oh, something just brightened up.
That was very weird. Oh, and look, it's dimming. I'm not touching the lights at all.
That's a weird process.
That's a terrible webcam.
Full of automation. It's perfecting your picture at all times.
Doing a terrible job of it. Thank you, Lenovo.
So I don't know about you, but I've started traveling again, and I forgot that it extends the week so much. Right? I only traveled from Sunday night to Wednesday. It feels like I put in solid 6 days, and I have 2 more days to go. I forgot that when you're traveling, you're working 6 a.m. to midnight every day, right? So it feels like two days in a row every single day.
Yeah, I can't keep track whether this is Tuesday or Friday, and I know it's neither of those.
Right.
You know, that's an interesting detail, that the week for us is longer, but probably for those around us, they may think that it's a shorter week. Like I'm gonna start traveling again, like in July. And now that you mentioned that, when we used to travel all the time, our family's probably like, "Oh, it's another day. Why are you tired or what this?" I'm like,
right.
And sometimes we may be putting a whole solid, like you said, now the 12 hours straight. Right. Even though you may go to a dinner, you may have a meeting, but you have to be engaged to be a good leader. If you're not engaged, you're gonna be looking out and then you're not gonna be productive.
Yeah. Yeah, you're turned up to an 8 the entire time when you're traveling, right? Sometimes it's just interacting with people at the airport. You have to be, awake and aware of the situation. But in front of clients, in front of your team, in front of the executives, like you're on, right? You're on stage at all times versus you're working at home. You're only on stage when the lights are on, right? When the camera's ready. Everything else is at your own pace, your own attention, your own whatever, right?
So even if it's not your significantly different. Right. Versus when you're those rare moments when you travel to meet team, when you travel to meet, whether it's team up, team down, left or right, you are in fact, right? You're representing something that's more than just yourself.
Right.
You're mentoring, you're team building, right? You're driving strategy, you're driving direction, right? You're really being far more active than you are when you're not traveling.
Yep.
And I would argue you're doing it more than you would if it's not an office versus non-office thing, right? Because when you're in the office, those sort of moments come stretched out over days and weeks and months.
Right.
You have to travel to make them happen. They're condensed down into mere moments, right? What would take a month, you're now trying to do in moments.
Right.
So it's this very active kind of thing. Even dinners, even the activities that happen outside the office, you're still kind of in that mode. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you're trying to condense the team building, the relationship building, the kind of value delivery of what would otherwise be months done into, the space in between bites.
And I don't care what anyone says, like working at home does not displace in-person communication. It simply doesn't. You don't have the ability to see the body language. You can't have a 30-second conversation. It's always a 30-minute conversation. You can't make quick decisions when you can with 3 people in a room and a whiteboard. You can't create as well if you're not together. Like there is no obvious displacement. It has to be a hybrid implementation. You need to see people in real life sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes.
There's no actual collaboration over Zoom, right? Collaboration is, I give you a whiteboard marker, I have a whiteboard marker, we work on the same whiteboard.
Right.
Right. Not, hey, no, update that. No, not that. No, the other box on the slide. No, that's not what. No, 3 words over. No, that's crap.
Right.
It's not collaboration.
No.
That's one person telling another person what they're going to do, and you time slice that to the various people on the call. That's not really collaborative. You don't.
And it's wordsmithing. You're not creating anything.
Right.
So if we think about that, we just describe different ways of working, different probably avenues to really be successful. So if we think about the ideal team, that group of people that when we come together could be, like you said, sometimes it may be remote like this. Sometimes you're going to go into a room. Sometimes you're going to say, hey, two of you work on this, the other three of you work on this other stuff, and then we're going to come and bring it back. What does that look like in your experience and what you have led and worked together to make really an efficient or that ideal team, if we can call it that utopia?
So the best team I've ever worked on was Paul's team. No two ways about it. We had the absolute smartest people, the whole extended team. The genius level was off the charts, right? It was the first time where I could look almost absolutely any direction and find someone smarter than me sitting in a chair, right? Someone that had an infinite amount of things for me to learn. There was not one person on that team that I couldn't have spent 3 years just with that person and exited where every single day I learned to my capacity. That was amazing to me. That was the best team. It's not the perfect team, though. It's not the ideal team. If we think about the ideal team, and I think that's kind of where we started this, right, is what's the ideal team? If you were to start totally greenfield with the organizations that you're within, what would your ideal team look like, right? And so I think we have to start with what do we have to do, right? We have the two sides of the coin. We have the strategic and the tactical, right? And so, Paul, what do you think?
And different teams have different purposes. Like I've had the privilege of leading highly tactical teams like call center teams, right? Contact centers, where you expect a certain level of sameness in many ways, right? Everybody's the same script. They're using the same tools. Most of the calls are relatively the same. At least you can categorize them in buckets, right? There's a very scripted answer to most of the questions. I expect those teams to have a high level of replaceability. Mostly because they tend to be younger, they tend to want to elevate through their careers much quicker, and therefore you have to replace those teams much higher. On the other side of the equation, I've led small, intense technologist teams where I have to have my only success is via, highly intelligent, highly capable, highly experienced people that can work and manage on their own. And then in the middle part, I've led very, very large teams that have had to be very, very diverse, from A's, B's, C's, and replaceable D's, from knowledge workers to task workers, from strategists to tacticians, from technologists that are hands-on keyboard to project managers that are worried about sort of the progress of any one particular initiative, right? So the makeup of those three different types of teams has been distinctly different. But I know if I've chosen one and presumed that one model was the correct model, that's always been a wrong choice. I've always been incorrect in presuming one model works.
That's true. That's true. And as executives, right, we don't actually have one team. We have many, many, many teams that roll up to those I interact with the most frequently to those I interact with the least frequently, and they couldn't really be diametrically opposite. Today, I'm trying to build what my CIO team looks like, right? What the people that report to me look like. So I've got infrastructure, applications, data and analytics, all that report up to me, right? Yeah. And so what does that look like? And it's interesting because you brought up customer support, help desk. Yeah. I'm not sure that my team consists of help desk today. Right, long term, not in the short term, but long term, I think that those roles start to become more and more outsourced. Right? And people that were help desk, I want to move more closer to the business. Right. So I need far more business analysts. I need far more, even maybe we call them, what's the term? Starts with an A. Oh crap. U.S. ambassadors, business ambassadors. Right? Maybe we call them business ambassadors because we ultimately, the goal of IT now is to build trust within the organization, trust within the business. I can't do that necessarily with the people and personalities I have. I don't have the ability to say, hey, 30% of your time needs to be spent really for getting a firm appreciation for what the business does, because they're going to go, I don't have 30% free time. Am I now working 130%? Well, no, that doesn't work.
Right.
Instead, what I have to do is go, can I find a place where I can outsource some tasks that we don't actually have to say we're core at being good at, and repurpose those people into something where we're core to being good at.
Right.
Right. And so if I'm able to do that, and I'm able to take some people and say, hey, we're going to call you business ambassadors. I really want you to learn how this business unit works. I want you to make relationships in this business unit. And then I want you to represent that business unit within the greater organization.
Let's have a side chat before we get back into this topic, because you brought up something interesting that I've struggled with as a leader. Okay. So service desk is a great example of something that feels like it's outsourceable, right? Because it's prescribed work in many ways. There's a set of problems and a set of solutions to that. However, service desk is one of the only interactions with the business, right? The vast majority of the people will contact the service desk, right? I have a problem with my laptop. I need a password change. I can't access this thing, this data, this application. And therefore, you kind of want to close this of service desk, right? You want to have them have the corporate hug. You want them to brand themselves the company, right? So I've struggled sometimes with ability to outsource that type of function because of their high interaction with in many ways the task workers of the business. I've struggled with its success because of that. What's been your experience?
So I think of it like candles, right? Maybe it's a good way to look at it. Maybe it's a bad way to look at it, but it's points of light, right?
Yeah.
Those points of light are in both number and brightness. The help desk is low brightness. It's very dim, but there's a million points of light.
Right.
Right. The problem that I've seen is, and it's kind of to your point, is if we extinguish those lights, we've now created darkness.
Right.
Right. What I'm specifically doing is saying, I want the luminescence to be turned up.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind reducing the number of points of light if I can replace it with much, much, much brighter light. And that's what I'm attempting to do, right? I'm attempting to say, rather than interfacing with people when they're at their worst, when they're at their most frustrated, and then doing it in a very targeted way, which if we're honest, it's low luminescence, right? I'm fixing your immediate problem. I'm not actually solving the challenges of your workday.
Right.
And instead, I embed that person in a way and say, your job is to figure out what the problems of the workday are, and let's work to systematically solve the problems of the workday.
Right.
The brightness of that is far greater. Right. In which case, I can't just add that brightness. I can't just add all of those roles.
Right.
So I'm going to extinguish the 1,000 points of dim light and add 20 points of very, very bright light.
Mm.
And so that's kind of how I look at it from the perspective of how do I deal with, to your point, losing those touch points. I'm going to drastically increase the quality of the touch, even if the quantity of the touch is reduced.
So how do you do that when you outsource? So let's say you take your service desk and say, like, this is when they email or when they call the 1-800 number, when they do an IM to IT support. How are you ensuring that interaction is mostly a positive one when it's outsourced? What's the setup of the vendor relationship to do that?
We're building the vendor relationship, and it is part of that vendor selection.
Right.
So it really comes down, the best way I know to do it is bring it down to the contract.
Right.
And ultimately, you can't shop for the cheapest vendor. You can't shop for the least expensive vendor. You have to shop for the vendor that gives you the most customization and the ability to define your own KPIs.
Right.
First call resolution, I like. Number of calls per hour, I grossly dislike.
Right.
Right. A KPI that focuses on customer satisfaction, I like.
Right.
Right. Any KPI that focuses on quality, you're not going to get there. You're driving to the lowest common denominator.
Right.
So you have to build the contract around KPIs that focus on delivering excellence to the customer. And then you have to be willing to put people in place to actually monitor that relationship.
Right.
Right. You don't
and pay extra for that privilege. So if you're not measuring quantity and you're measuring quality, correct, then that's a 30% premium to that. But that should be okay.
And that should be okay. Otherwise, you don't do it.
Right.
Otherwise, you say, we're not in a position where this is actually going to be outsourced because the quality is going to drop so much, it's going to hurt us rather than help us. It's going to hurt as an enterprise.
Did you feel you have to personally test it? In other words, I'm going to call this 1-800 number, pretending I'm one of the end users, just to see the kind of interaction I get.
Yes, every time. Okay. And you also kind of have to go to an end user and ask for them to help.
Right.
Right? Like, can I break your computer and have you call it in?
Right.
It's part of the test. I'm never going to be able to pull it off successfully. Okay, I want you to do this. Okay, I'm not going to do that. Why are you not going to? Because that's not the right thing to do. If you failed, I don't know what's coming. You know what I mean? Versus, I'm going to break your computer in a known way. I'd like you to call a help desk and have them walk you through how to fix it.
Right. Nice. All right. So back to the main topic. So the makeup of your team. So let's take the 3 different teams I described, and maybe like you've experienced leading those 3 teams too. So how would you make up the task worker team, right? As if you were managing the service desk. Like what does that look like in terms of skill sets, in terms of tenure, in terms of hierarchy?
So I tend to have level 0 and level 1. Mm-hmm. Right. Level 0 is pure script. They do first call. They do phone rings, first answer. Right. They do triage. So here's the workflow for triage. If it ends up in these buckets, it goes to stays at level 0, goes to level 1, goes to level 1+ or 2. And they're pure entry level. I don't expect any experience whatsoever. Right? Matter of fact, experience kind of gets in the way at level 0.
Right.
I really want you to follow the script, and I don't want you to make one up. Right? If you get to the point where there's a script that should be here, I want a flag raised. Level 1 looks at it and says, yeah, this should definitely be a script. We build a script for it, deploy it to level 0. Right? The problem with experienced task workers, experienced help desk at level 0 is they have knowledge, and so they go off script. They're likely to go off script, and they're likely to think the script is ridiculous because the script is ridiculous.
Right.
Right. The script is written to be ridiculous. A very consistent experience each and every time.
Right.
And then you go to level 1, and level 1 is now I have some knowledge, but mostly I have a thought process. Level 0 has given me a logical thought process that I carry through to level 1. And while I'm not following the same script, I'm not following a detailed script, I'm still thinking things through logically, right? Mm-hmm. And I now know how to document what a script should look like, so I can document those elements. And so my default is I know how to logically think through a problem, even if I can't solve it, that's okay. And I know how to logically document a problem, so the next person that runs into it that's at level 1 will be able to do something with it, and we can turn it eventually into a level 0 script. And then I really start looking for my pluses, right, my high performers, to promote to level 2, or at that point, I'm also looking for leadership.
Right.
Right. Who manages a team? Who's got natural leadership capabilities? Who understands the dynamics thereof, right? And what skills are people starting to lead to, right? Do I have someone that the way they solve the problem is by banging out a PowerShell script or banging out a Python script? Mm-hmm. Right? Do I have someone that documents really, really well? Right? I'm looking for this as my incubator for other roles within the organization. Because my very first inclination is always to try to promote from within. Right? Buy, build, and borrow. So if it's ever possible, I want to build. I want to take the existing people I have and build them into the better version of themselves. Help them get there.
Right.
I think we've made that promise. I've talked about that promise quite a bit. Right? We make a promise to every employee we hire that they'll have a place here, and that doesn't mean they'll have a place to sit. It means they'll have a place to grow.
Right.
Right. So that's kind of what I look for. And that's kind of where help desk ends to me, right? Level 2 is people in the field. They're not help desk. Right. Level 2 is a person that doesn't have a script they follow. They have a wiki, right? They have a library of answers that hopefully is more specific than Google, but they're still not following a script. They may put a person at your desk. That may be escalate to someone at the data center or someone working on a cloud console, right? Those
right, right. Yeah, I expect I hire for personality versus for experience in those type of roles, because I'm looking for somebody to appreciate the repetitiveness and the stress, but still be engaging with somebody, right? Engaging with the caller, engaging with somebody who's in the IM side. And we've lost Howard. Oh, there he's back.
He's come back.
On the other side of that, on a high IQ but likely low EQ team, right? Highly experienced, highly talented. They're top of their technologist trade, top of their industry trade. The makeup of that team is significantly different. The makeup of that team is about empowerment. The makeup of that team is presumption of effectiveness versus micromanagement. The makeup of that, how you lead that team, is presuming that they're going to be successful and let them be successful. However, care and feeding of their emotional journey becomes a pretty significant portion of the leader's day. Right?
I will say I'm 70-30 on that team.
Okay.
I hire 70% of the roles for their high EQ and their existing knowledge and talent. I hire 30% for their high EQ, right? And their low.
To balance it out a bit.
Correct. Right. To round off the sharp edges that team tends to have.
Right.
And then I ask them to mentor each other, and then I also help build the opposite piece, right? Feed the piece that I didn't hire them for.
Right.
Feed the EQ for the IQ, and feed the IQ for the EQ.
Right.
Because ultimately, I don't need well-rounded people. I just need people without sharp edges.
Right.
I need people that help promote the business and build trust. Our job is to build trust more than anything. And high IQ people with low EQ tend to remove trust.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't trust that you empathize with me, and therefore I don't trust you, and therefore I don't trust the department, and I don't trust the team, I don't trust the department. Same with the EQ. I trust that you empathize, you understand the problem, but you can't fix it.
Right.
And therefore I don't trust you, I don't trust your team, and I don't trust the business unit.
Right.
So let me ask you then this question, because you're talking about those bright engineers or bright people that can do the work and need some help on the emotional side. How do you then build a team that you're going to be the tip of the spear within the company? That company may have not built anything, may have not done anything else, but that you need to get them all together to build new pathways, to work on new projects that no one else have done, but senior management says that's our direction.
So we've all heard this term before, because I use it frequently, the pioneers.
Yeah.
That's what this team is, right? It's finding its way through this forest. It's getting your way to the top of the mountain. It's westward bound, right? That whole series of team. And since the three of us, most recently were on the team that did this kind of work, it is incredibly difficult. It is fair to say, because not only are you trying to discover the appropriate path, but you're trying to create the waypoints, right? The signposts. You're digging out the path so that people can follow you. Your goal isn't to drag them, right? Because you don't have that time or energy. You're still trying to create your path forward, but you're supposed to tie the ribbons around the trees, right? So that they can find their way, follow you when they have to follow you.
And those that follow are the builders.
Yeah, the builders.
The problem with the pioneers is they're one part of a long strategy.
Right.
Pioneers mark the places they think make sense for a town. The builders then have to come along and go, you're right, that makes sense for a town, or no, that doesn't, and then build a town.
Right.
Right. They're operationalizing the very things the pioneers say, this looks interesting. And all a pioneer can say is this looks interesting.
Yeah.
Right? We ran a proof of concept. That's as far as we got.
Yeah. There's a river, there's some trees. I saw some rabbits. You should be able to sustain life there.
I saw some deer. It's got good daylight, right? The winter was so bad. whatever it happens to be, right? There's natural game trails, anything, right?
Right.
The builders then have to come along and validate it. So they have to be able to understand enough of what the pioneers did, and the pioneers have to leave enough clues behind that they can go, yeah, okay, I see what you did here, I like what you did here, and we're going to do more of that. And you're right. And then they also have to have the teams necessary to do the building, which is 3 times harder than executing what is built, or 5 times harder, or 10 times harder, or 20 times harder. Right. And therefore, you need somewhat more expensive people, but certainly more than you did in the pioneers, because they have to be nearly as smart as the pioneers, but they have to be a whole lot more practical than the pioneers. Don't need to be practical. It's the wild, wild west, right?
No, they can be as risky as they wish.
Right. But then the builders have to come along and they have to go, how do I remove all of this risk so that this lean-to doesn't fall down and crush the people living inside?
Right.
Right. So that my wall holds if that river floods and we don't get all washed away, right? Whatever the risks happen to be. And then you have those who take those instructions and operationalize a city. They're not building anymore. Now they're running the city.
Right.
Right. Totally different set of skills. All the while, you're writing messages back to the king. Right? And each team needs to communicate back to the king. Hey, this is what we're doing. Can we continue to fund this expedition? Hey, this is what we're doing. Can we continue to fund this city? Hey, this is what we're doing. Can we continue to fund these operations? Right? All of that comes together in a way that can come crashing down if one single person doesn't do their part. Or God forbid, you forgot to hire messengers.
Right.
Right? Because that's the spot that it actually tends to fall apart. And it gets harder to do the messaging the further down the chain you go, because the pioneers are super enthusiastic.
Yep.
Right? So generally, you take a pioneer, you put them in front of a room, everybody else is enthusiastic.
Yeah, they all want to follow them because
100%.
they've heard the stories of the frontier.
And you have to go, okay, cool, you can follow, but understand we're sleeping under tents, we're building fires, we're setting snares for beasts, we're not carrying a kitchen.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're like, well, hey, that sounds like a lot of work. So who comes after you? Well, that's the builders. They're going to build the cities. Oh, that sounds exciting. So they're going to take what you do and turn it into something big, right? That's exactly right. Who are they? Well, we don't know yet. See, that's part of the problem. We're just the pioneers out here. The king hasn't funded the building team yet.
Right.
You might see why the pioneers failed. Right. Or they should be along any time, and then any time turns into where the hell are the builders? Well, they're 17 towns back. We have been designing the core infrastructure, but instead somebody really wanted a nice garden. And they took all 17 people and they made them really nice gardeners, and they're delayed. They'll never get the town that you've just created. And right. You can't take pioneers and turn them into builders. It's not the function. That's not what you hired them for. And frankly, you don't hire pioneers to work well together.
That's true. They're living their own lives. Correct. They're taking their own paths. They're finding different directions, potentially to different places or even the same place.
To different purpose.
Yep.
Right? One might be tasked with, hey, I really need you to find a place where we can secure all the gold we found. And you tell another one, I really need you to find more gold. And you tell another one, I really need you to scout good locations for fishing.
Right.
They're not the same. Right? So you can't then go, hey, I'd like you all to come back to step one. We're all going to build a city together. Half of them have never been to that city.
Exactly.
Right?
They've never walked in that direction.
Right. They don't know how to operate a backhoe. They've been tying ribbons around trees, marking a path.
Right.
Not the same skill. So it's really critical. And to kind of bring it home, right? One of the things I've asked for 2 interns or 1 full-time employee to do nothing but build PowerPoint decks. To do nothing but help work on clarifying message. And they cannot be a technical person. I will not put a technical person in the role.
Right.
The technical person is going to understand the concepts to a much, much deeper level, and thus build decks to a much, much deeper level.
Right.
I want somebody that constantly goes, I don't understand what you're telling me. Dumb it down for me, because that's how you present to the business. I need the business who has no understanding of technology to understand the concepts. So I want someone who's not a technologist to sit at my left hand and build those decks, because messaging to the king is the most important job we have. It's the best way to build trust.
That was a brilliant ending to this conversation, Carlos.
Yeah, that was really good. So I think that the message for today is make sure that you message the king in a dumbed down way, because that's the way to understand it. Now, like simplicity. And I think that when getting, I took notes, because looking at when we build teams, we know we talked before joining. It's interesting the detail about the risk factor. Higher end, going developing, trying new things. There's a higher risk factor, and if you put someone that is trying to build, they're not gonna try anything. They're gonna try to just look. No, it has to be perfect before we do anything. And you need those risky pioneers so they can go out and then pass the ball down with the vision to the builders and the detail that I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but I captured it. The builders are not gonna operate what they do. They're gonna build, they're gonna make it work, but then someone needs to operate it. So then we can send the message back to the king that say, hey, now we're making money and you can go out on a vacation and get a margarita.
And you're never all three.
Right.
You as an individual, you could be two, right? The circle of you could encapsulate two. You're not encapsulating all three.
Right.
My friends, it's been awesome to see you again. Make sure that you subscribe, you share, and we'll see you on our next episode.